welcome the two people that are behind who are going to help us get behind causality for what I think is one of the most important issues of our time, what makes a great life. Please welcome Byron Johnson and Tyler VanderWeele.
Thank you, John. I really enjoyed that history lesson.
Well, gentlemen, this is a wild project. I mean, from a methodological standpoint, doing something like this is very challenging in a time like this. What inspired you to do it?
Well, interestingly enough, John, the Templeton Foundation sponsored a meeting at Harvard that Tyler hosted in 2018 on flourishing, and about 13 scholars from around the world were invited to participate. I was fortunate to be one. And we each gave a presentation over a few days. And Tyler's presentation was the first one. And his presentation was on causation. And, you know, if you've ever had this experience where you felt like that person was talking to me, I felt like he was talking to me. And Tyler's message was, the world deserves the best we can give, the best methodologies that are possible, and we shouldn't settle for less, and we've been settling for less for too long. And so that talk just really floored me. And so I just began during the conference thinking about what might we do to tackle the issue. And I knew I was going to be meeting with you and others at Gallup the next week. So Tyler and I just kind of dreamt up this project at that meeting during the breaks. And I said, what do we have to lose to go down there and talk to them to see if this might be possible? And so that's exactly what we did. Tyler and I went to Washington, D.C. We met with Gallup. We'd had a preliminary conversation with our friends at the Templeton Foundation. And everybody kind of thought we were crazy because it was such an ambitious project. And we appreciate the honesty of Gallup because you all said to us in that boardroom, we're not certain we can pull it off. Give us some time to talk to our team around the world. And so we waited to hear back, and of course, you guys said we can do it. It's possible. And then Tyler and I set out to raise funds to make that happen, and that took us 3 years to raise the funding to do the Global Flourishing Study. And Heather Dill, who's the president of the Templeton Foundation, is here with us today. Heather, thank you, because if it weren't for the John Templeton Foundation, the other foundations wouldn't have come on board. And so JTF was just critical to get us started on the journey of raising the funds. And it has been a long journey. I know some people have said, well, what took so long? You guys have been at this for so long, and these studies are only just now coming out. We had a year of just pilot work alone, doing all these cognitive interviews in the 22 countries. And so the field work was amazingly difficult. It was a heavy lift. And but it's been a great project, the dream of a lifetime, actually, for both Tyler and me, to be a part of something quite like this. And then along the way to meet people like Bubba and Cindy, Kathy, who've been great partners for us, thanks to Matt Turvey and Sean Stover, and then to meet the Trilith family here. These people are just amazing with Dan's vision for inspiration. Dan, Rhonda, thank you for hosting us here. So we feel like this project, the response has been overwhelming. We really didn't anticipate it. We did not anticipate that the nature journals would be so responsive to the Global Flourishing Study. So it has been rather remarkable, and we just kind of sense that the study itself is an engine for what could be a global movement. Why not dream big? And Trilith, I think we hope that you're going to come along with us for the ride, because I think we need you. And I think we need unlikely partners in this journey to flourish. And as we said last week in Washington, D.C. with the big rollout, we haven't figured anything out, but we intend to. And it's going to be a great journey, and we look forward to being on a journey with all of you. And so, yeah.
You know, the madness of the project that Byron and I are talking about is the fact that we're not just showing up at people's houses, we're asking if they will participate in surveys with us sort of for the end of time. So the recruitment process is not just so difficult about, hey, will you sit with us for 45 minutes? It's, will you sit with us for 45 minutes kind of anytime we show up the rest of your life? And so when you hear that, and again, it's happening in these communities all over the world, it shows just how difficult this is. But when we show up, we have to ask them something. And Tyler, one of the things that you've dedicated your life to is understanding each of these components of what makes a great life. Can you walk us through how you came up with some of the things that we are currently measuring? And are there questions that maybe we still need to be asking that we aren't currently?
I'd be very happy to do so, John, and to give an overview of some of the main results that have emerged, along with the conceptual frameworks that we've been using to try to carry out this work. Less than 2 weeks ago, we released about 40 papers with Nature and Springer describing flourishing across the globe and numerous aspects of flourishing. I've been told I'm not supposed to give a 60-hour seminar going through each of the papers one by one, but in the next 8 minutes or so, I'll give some of the high-level results. You also have our flagship paper there with you, which I will be covering. So what is the Global Flourishing Study? The Global Flourishing Study is a study of over 200,000 individuals in 22 countries and 1 territory, representing nearly 2/3 of the world's population, with participants on all 6 populated continents, and with intended at least 5 years of annual data collection of the same group of people over time, hopefully beyond those 5 years as well, but again, the critical part is the same group of people each year, and that's what gives us insights into causality. In terms of what we measure, we're trying to take a very broad, holistic understanding of flourishing. And the questionnaire itself has 109 different questions on numerous aspects of flourishing and its potential determinants. But in some of our main analyses, including the ones we've provided as a handout, we focus on 6 core domains of flourishing, things that seem to be shared and desired across cultures, things that are sought for their own end. And these are, first, happiness and life satisfaction; second, physical and mental health; third, meaning and purpose; fourth, character and virtue; fifth, close social relationships; and that we also measure a 6th domain, financial and material stability, as an important means to sustain those other ends. And so as a simple measure of flourishing, we take 2 questions in each of those 6 domains, questions drawn principally from the existing well-being literature that have been used widely in the literature and have received some degree of empirical validation. So for example, with life satisfaction, we ask, overall, how satisfied are you with life as a whole these days, from 0 to 10? Or with meaning, to what extent do you find the things you do in your life worthwhile? Or for relationships, to what extent do you agree with the statement, my relationships are as satisfying as I would like them to be? We've done nuanced analyses on each of these questions and numerous others as well, but we also average these 12 questions to get a kind of a crude overall composite measure of flourishing. And when we look at this flourishing index across countries and look at the variation, the ordering of the list might not be quite what you would have anticipated. At the very top, we find Indonesia, followed by Israel, Philippines, Mexico, Poland. Many of the countries, numbers 9 through 20, all fall at about 7, sort of between 6.8 and 7.2. And we probably shouldn't make too much about the variations between 6.8 and 7.2. These questions are being translated into different languages. How these concepts are interpreted is going to vary across cultures. So many of these countries, again, are reporting about 7, including the United States there, right in the middle at 7.1. But there are some outliers. Turkey reported especially low at 6.3, and Japan shockingly low at about 5.9, and did so across these different questions that we were asking. And then, as I said before, there are outliers on the other side too: Indonesia, Israel, Philippines, Mexico, Poland. I'll come back a little later to try to begin to understand and explore why that might be the case. In addition to looking at these countries, we also looked at variations across different demographic groups. We did this both within country, but then we also averaged, pooled, aggregated across the various countries. And so what we found is that flourishing globally tends to be increasing with age. Not in all countries, but in many, including Argentina, Brazil, Australia, Sweden, the United States, the United Kingdom. Again, not everywhere. In Poland and in Tanzania, flourishing was decreasing in age. But in many countries, flourishing was increasing in age. Overall, globally, we found men and women report relatively similar levels of flourishing, but not in all countries. In Japan, women report considerably higher levels of flourishing than men. In Brazil, it's the reverse. Men report considerably higher flourishing than women. Replicating a lot of past work, we also found married individuals tend to report higher levels of flourishing than single individuals, but once again, not everywhere. In India, in Tanzania, it was the reverse. Why might this be so? Perhaps unsurprisingly, those who were employed or self-employed reported higher levels of flourishing than the unemployed. Likewise, flourishing tended to increase with levels of education, but once again, not everywhere. In Australia and Hong Kong, we found the reverse pattern. One of the most consistent results across countries and really across outcomes was the importance of religious service attendance, which we found associated with considerably higher levels of flourishing, as was the case with other forms of community participation as well. It's difficult to summarize 50, 100 papers all in 10 minutes, but some of the key takeaways and points which I think really deserve further reflection are as follows. First, that young people in many countries are not flourishing well. In many of these countries, as I noted, flourishing tends to increase with age. And this is in contrast with a lot of the earlier work on well-being, focused principally on life satisfaction and life evaluation, which had suggested more U-shaped curves with younger people and older people doing better, and those in midlife perhaps struggling with young children and aging parents and career challenges reporting lower. But what seems to have been happening over time, at least with flourishing, is that left part of the U has been flattening. Young people aren't doing as well as they used to be. And I think this is real cause for concern and for societal reflection. Are we sufficiently investing in the well-being of youth, of subsequent generations? What more can be done? Second, we've seen that different countries are flourishing in different ways. Flourishing can be understood as multidimensional. It's not just one aspect of life, but all aspects of life. And so what we find is that richer developed countries report higher levels of financial security, unsurprisingly, higher levels also of overall life evaluation, the question that the Gallup World Poll has been using all these years. But when we turn to other aspects of flourishing, when we return to meaning, relationships, pro-social character, helping others, often the middle-income countries are doing better. With meaning in life, we find actually a negative correlation with GDP per capita and meaning in life. And I think this raises really important questions with regard to how can we carry out economic development, which is so important, in ways that don't compromise meaning and purpose or character and relationships. So once again, material for, I think, deep societal and policy reflection. Third, again, one of the most consistent findings across countries and across outcomes is the power of religious service attendance. Those who are attending more than weekly versus not at all tend to report nearly a full point higher in flourishing. Those are purely descriptive analyses, but we've also asked a bunch of questions retrospectively about childhood experiences. And even after controlling for a host of other childhood variables, we find childhood religious service attendance is likewise strongly predictive of subsequent adult flourishing. So this seems to be an important pathway. And as we've reflected on these results, we've wondered whether the lower levels of meaning and purpose, of relationship satisfaction, of character in much of the developed West may be due to declining rates of religious participation. We may need to reconsider and help support spiritual pathways to well-being. So this really just is the tip of the iceberg. There's more information online at the Global Flourishing Study website, at the Nature and Springer Special Collection. The data itself is freely available through the Center for Open Science, so you or others can make use of it and try to gain additional insights into both the distribution and determinants of flourishing. A project like this really wouldn't have been possible without an extraordinary team. We're deeply grateful to the Templeton Philanthropies and to all of our funders for the support of this project. Deeply grateful to Gallup, who has led this data collection. It's inconceivable that this could have come about without them. So both to those at Gallup and then the vendors around the world, the participants in each of these countries. It has been an extraordinary journey and experience. Grateful to the Center for Open Science for hosting this data in an open access manner, to the incredible teams at Baylor and Harvard who have carried out this research. And I'm also deeply grateful for my partner and collaborator, Byron Johnson. His leadership, support, and friendship really have been a very important part of my own flourishing. So we'll look forward to continuing the conversation and journey together.
Tyler, I'm going to put words in your mouth here, but on the second bullet point, again, I'll kind of summarize it, but you said money and meaning don't correlate. You must have some hypotheses, because that is a massive discovery, if that's true. Can you share some of the hypotheses that you might have around why that's happening?
Sure. I mean, I think it's even more dramatic, at least at the country level. Money and meaning do correlate, but they correlate negatively. And it's disturbing to see this and to consider why this might be so. At this stage, what we have are hypotheses. As we continue to collect data, we'll be able to discern more and more the causal elements of these. But as I noted, we think some of the story, not the whole of the story, but we think some of the story is the declining rates of religious participation in many of the wealthier countries. And religion, faith, is often what provides these powerful systems of meaning. But I think there's probably more to the story than that. I think as nations develop economically, there's less of a dependence on one another and consequently less of community. And so I think community often provides a sense of meaning. Fertility rates tend to go down, and that too tends to be associated with lower levels of meaning. Children, empowering the next generation is an incredible source of meaning. But I do think another aspect of this is what do we prioritize at a policy level? And I think for the most part, we've prioritized economic growth and to a certain extent also health. And these are important. I would never want to downplay the importance of economic security, of health. But if that's our only focus, I think we're going to neglect some of these other aspects of flourishing, neglect meaning in life, neglect relationships, neglect character, a love for one's neighbor, for others. And I think these other aspects of flourishing really need to be embedded in our policy pursuits and our societal reflections. And the second little paper that you have there, a commentary in Nature, is arguing for policymakers to take these matters seriously and to start collecting data and make flourishing, all these aspects of flourishing, a policy priority.
Byron, the media have been very interested in this work. I mean, you and I think, were surprised at how interested they were. Even Nature has asked for dozens, even if not 100 publications coming from this. Why do you think there's been such an overwhelmingly positive reception to this research?
Well, I think that just the scope of the study has really captured the interest of people, and the fact that it is going to be longitudinal and that they can track it over time. I think that's part of it. It could be that many people are noticing the trends that you put up on your slide deck of the global rise of unhappiness. This was missed by some of our leaders, but maybe people weren't missing it. And when they hear about the Global Flourishing Study, they think, oh, this might give us a glimpse of what could be possible. I think that's one of the more exciting things about this, is that people are seeing it in a positive light. We don't deny the languishing that you've found. It's there, but we're looking at what are the determinants of flourishing. So it's a more positive story, and that may be why it's resonating. We've been rather shocked that the interest has been global, not just here in the West, which is something that typical research is. It's done in the West, it's captured in the West, and no one else hears about it. But I think this is somewhat of a game changer. So the response has been overwhelming, even with Nature asking, can we do this again with you next year? So that too is quite the invitation to receive, because we really couldn't have a higher outlet than that one to be working from. So we're grateful for it. It's almost like somebody else is in control of this whole project. That's what Tyler and I talk about all the time. And let me just say about Tyler, man, what a dear, dear friend he has become in my life. And we've had that too with you and your dad at Gallup. So there is a sense in which this is a project that had to happen. And we're just glad that we were able to say yes at the right time.
Maybe I'll ask it in slightly different terms, which is, a big component of this project is to understand the impact that religion also has on a human being's life, which I think most would believe is an important inquiry for humanity. But sometimes there are institutions that may not have the same interest in religion, and so this overwhelming reception from the press, from halls of academia, why do you feel like there's more of a positive reception at this particular time?
I think it's the rigor of the...
And again, to an issue that maybe they haven't studied or taken such a positive interest in previously.
So I've expected pushback from a lot of the interviews that we've been doing with largely secular media. It just hasn't been there yet. And religion is so prominent in the findings, but I do think they've checked out the study. And being able to be in the Nature portfolio, I think that's given us a real cushion. But the rigor of the study, the fact that it is open science and people can see how we've done the work, our analytic code we provide, nothing is hidden. And this has not, sadly, been the case with major studies like this one. So this is the first massive study to be open science in this way. So I do think that the rigor that the study brings has allowed some of that criticism not to be there. So when they're asking us questions and they're baffled, one person was interviewing me and they said, I love this study, but I'm struggling with it. I'm just really struggling with the religious service attendance. I'm an atheist, I don't participate, but she said, I don't deny these findings. Help me understand this. I want to understand this. So all we're just wanting to have a conversation with people, and so it's been really a pleasure to have that conversation and just to use the data itself and explain that. And I think that it's falling on ears that are receptive.
Tyler, you've now been interviewed in a number of media outlets. You've been speaking in a number of places. What are the most interesting questions that you've been asked about this project? And just generally, what are people asking about? Where does this make people's minds go when they see that we're studying a flourishing life?
I mean, Byron and I will often joke that in some ways our least favorite, but in some ways also our most favorite question is, what is the one key takeaway from this study? And after 6 years of work and hundreds of pages of analyses and papers, it is very difficult to boil it all down to one thing. And so what I will often point towards is this issue of different countries flourishing in different ways, and turn it around. Ask, what is it that we want as a society? How is it that we want to flourish, both as individuals, but also as a nation? And I think some of the reason for the deep resonance this study has had is it is looking at all aspects of flourishing. It is helping people to ask these questions of, what do I have in life, and what am I missing? What am I seeking? And what are we missing? What are we seeking as a country? Having said that, I will also often get questions which are very detailed and specific, sort of, I saw those age trends and I'm really interested in the UK and I really want to know about 18 to 24-year-olds, and can you tell me how meaning and purpose differ from relationships and character? And I think this is one of about 100,000 different tables that we have produced and are interested in, but I don't have it all quite committed to memory. But I think it points towards the extraordinary contribution to knowledge that this has been, and how much more there is to understand. If we look at a particular country, a particular demographic group, a particular aspect of flourishing, there's so much to learn, so much still to uncover. So I think this data resource will provide opportunities for learning, for reflection, and for understanding for many, many years to come. So it's really exciting.
John, I have a question I want to ask you. Thinking about open science, which means everybody in the world theoretically has access to this data. And our team, the only advantage that we had is that we knew what we wanted to do once we had access to the data. And so in that sense, we probably had a jump on others. But with open access, you hope that everyone will replicate your findings, and they won't have contradictory findings. And so we have an inside story of some friends at Gallup that published a paper using the data, and it just so happens we submitted a paper almost identical a few weeks later, and ours was rejected because they had accepted one earlier. And John goes, sorry about that. John goes, I didn't know we had people on our side working on the data. And so at first we kind of had our feelings hurt that our own family beat us to the punch.
This is the first time learning of this. I didn't.
And you know what the beautiful thing was? The findings were identical, essentially. The coefficients, I mean, it proved the point. We didn't cook the books. People, unbeknownst to us, essentially did the same study and came out with the same findings. So we are just hoping people will replicate everything that we're doing. We welcome it. And that's how confident we are in the findings. And so I think the open science thing is a huge game changer for this project.
Byron, of everyone that's taken an interest in this work, who is it that surprised you the most that took an interest?
Well, maybe the churches.
Why would that surprise you?
Well, I think that oftentimes there's been this antagonistic relationship between the faith communities and science, which is rather unfortunate. My dear late colleague Rodney Stark said, where do you think science came from? You know, It came from religion. And so Tyler and I, we love science, and we happen to be Christians, okay? So, these two things in our mind go together. And so we have had churches reach out to us, and I kind of thought they might not. And so we want the world to flourish. We want governments to flourish. We want schools to flourish. We want the healthcare system to flourish. We want our military to flourish. It's a message that resonates far and wide, but what if you could help congregations become healthier? When you consider the economic impact alone of congregations, and someone like Robert Putnam says that half of all social capital is spiritual, what if the houses of worship in the United States and around the world could have even more impact for good? So the fact that there has been interest has been somewhat of a surprise. And one of our colleagues, one of Tyler's bright stars at Harvard, is leading a Flourishing Church initiative right now. And so we're very excited about that project and what that might help us learn about congregations, and then how could that, again, be amplified. And the whole Global Flourishing Study, in my mind, is all about amplification, multiplying knowledge in a really quick way that we have not anticipated.
All right, 2 final questions for each of you, as fast as possible. Tyler, you've stared at all of this data for a very long time. What is it that you've seen that has inspired you the most in everything that you've seen in this work so far?
I mean, what has inspired me most is the capacity for this study and this work to so profoundly advance our knowledge of flourishing so quickly. What we've just described is only the first wave of data. We now already have completed data collection for the second wave, so we've followed that same group of 200,000 individuals. We have another year of data. We are in the field with Gallup for the third wave. And even with the second wave, the advance will be so much more than the first. We will be looking at, for example, how does hope in a given country affect subsequently levels of happiness or meaning in life or relationships or income. But then we'll be doing that in each of those 22 countries. So we'll be looking at the effects of hope on 50 different outcomes. It's like 50 studies there all at once. But in 22 countries. So now we are at over 1,000 studies. And this is just one of the papers that we'll be publishing. The next member of our research team will be looking not at hope, but at forgiveness, and the next one at gratitude. And so the expansion of knowledge, of our understanding of flourishing really is extraordinary. It is also humbling. How do we make sense of all this? Knowledge is one thing, but how do we also exercise wisdom? How do we discern in this mass of knowledge of new results what is most important? And so that's something that I think as a research team, but also as a broader community, we need to come back to. What do we make of these results? How should we live differently? But I do think that the notion of flourishing has the potential to capture the imagination and to direct us towards those things which are most important in life. So I'm really excited about the subsequent waves and inspired by both the responsibility and the opportunity that we have.
Byron, final question. Where is this all going? What's next for the next 5, 10 years? Do we come up with discoveries that change humanity? Do we take this to every single country in the world? What's next for this work?
Well, we want to finish strong with these first 5 waves, but we would be lying if we didn't tell you that we have plans, big plans. Not for waves 6 and 7, but could we keep it going indefinitely? Is there a way to do it? If this study is an engine for a global flourishing movement, you'd hate for it to end. And so when you and your dad launched the Gallup World Poll, you said, we're going to do it for 100 years. Well, I haven't had the guts to say that, but Tyler, why not? We're going to do the Global Flourishing Study for 100 years. There you go. You heard it here. We would love to keep it going. And honestly, I can say this, we're not worried about the money. You know, doing the project, getting the right people involved, we want to do that, do the science well. The other things will take care of themselves. And as we work with you and others at Gallup, to think creatively about what might we do to keep it going.
You guys, it's amazing how there are so many people in this world that talk about changing the world, and there are others who go up and roll up their sleeves and actually do it, and you two are the ones that are doing that. So on behalf of everyone at Gallup, thank you for doing a project that's changing the world and letting us be part of it. So thank you, gentlemen.